Well, hello, hello, hello. We are back.
Yes, we are.
It's been a minute,
Yes,
right?
it
Oh
has.
my
The whole
God.
nother season.
Summer has been so busy for us. We've been traveling all over, literally. But we're super excited to kick off this 5th episode of our podcast talking about what?
Emotional instability.
Ooh, this is going to get
Emotional
juicy. Super excited about this. And we have a special guest with us, the one and the only Natalie Allen. We're going to tell you a little bit about Natalie. Natalie is a clinical director and owner of Charisma Therapy Associates right here in Chicago's south suburbs. She is a licensed clinical professional counselor with a master's degree in counseling from St. Xavier University in Chicago. She's also a certified grief counselor and a certified trauma counselor. And one of the things I love about Natalie is that she enjoys helping others tap into their internal strengths as they work through their past experiences and the challenges of today. Now, that doesn't tie into emotional instability.
That's right.
I don't know what does. Welcome, Natalie. So grateful to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here in front of the Studleys. I love what y'all are doing, giving wisdom, encouragement, love, and support to those around you. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for the encouragement.
Being with us on this afternoon. All right, so we're going to kick it off. This is going to be a great conversation. We believe this is going to be impactful.
Yeah.
So we're going to kick it off by it's my wife and I. So Roz and I got into a really good conversation, a good 30 minutes maybe. And it was a deep conversation. Mm-hmm. So this was centered around the show, The One. Now, if you haven't seen it, it's with Kirk Franklin and his wife, and they try to hook, two people up with some people, another dating show. But this is interesting because there was a woman who was trying to choose, a man, and she really had a very difficult time in doing that. She actually wound up not choosing a man, and she said, "I'll choose myself."
Yeah,
because she wasn't
after going through 11 episodes. I mean, the whole season of the show,
right,
is all, and the premise, like Trey said, is you're dating different people to try to discover that person who's going to be the one by the end of the series. Mm-hmm. So I was shocked when she chose herself. I got it, but I was like, oh my God, all those dudes who thought like, wow, we have a chance with this person, and it came down to, I choose myself, none of you.
And I know Roz was disappointed. And I thought it was a little, I thought it was courageous on her part, saying that she was just going to just be by herself because she really was she was emotionally unstable. So I thought it was very courageous because a lot of people they go from, a lot of us go from one relationship to another relationship and don't really, choose ourselves, don't really just work on ourselves for a season. So we have Ms. Natalie Allen. We want to ask you, for one, what is emotional instability?
Okay.
Let's just kick it off with that.
On today, teach us.
Okay. And I'm going to give you the short answer of emotional instability. It has to do with the person's character, the way that they show up in relationships. For someone that has symptoms or diagnosis of emotional instability, you'll often see like this roller coaster, chaotic type relationships that they're in. They have a distorted or unrealistic self-image. They can be moody. They can sometimes be impulsive. So it's a personality disorder. It's something that they struggle with in not just intimate partner relationships, but also in family and friend relationships as well.
Okay.
That's good. That's really I heard a couple terms that I was like, ooh, could kind of relate to that term over there. So interesting.
Absolutely. So answer this question for us. So we have something to share, but before we even go into that, can people be together who are emotionally unstable?
Like having a successful relationship, you mean? Like two individuals
two people
coming together,
successful in a relationship?
It is, anything is possible. Let me offer that, because I don't want to rain on anyone's parade and allow people to feel as though they're going to be lonely forever. Anything is possible. But what I will say is that when it comes to any sort of emotional or mental health instability, dysregulation, it takes a lot of hard work on both ends.
Mm.
You have to work, both parties have to work on themselves individually really hard, as well as a unit. They have to be very intentional with the work that they do. If not, then you're just going to see a lot of chaos, a lot of back and forth, a lot of manipulation, a lot of control, just a lot of just wackiness in a relationship.
Wow. That's
Okay.
insightful.
Yeah. So we can attest to the wackiness because quiet as kept. Yeah, it was. I can admit that. But you know what? When we first got married, it was a situation where I had a temper. I had a temper out this world, and so I would get really upset when my wife would not really want to have a conversation the way I wanted to have a conversation. And so she would be storming out the house, and I was like, "Get back here," and all this stuff. Just really, definitely emotionally unstable. And so the thing is, God was good because we have to work on ourselves. I just got to a point where, like, you know what? Forget this. This is enough. We cannot continue like this.
Mhm.
So, just through a process, though, it was a process of being able to work through the issues that I had and issues that Roz had, because it's not just me. You know what I'm saying? It's not just me. It's two people in the relationship, and with God being a third, really working in us. And so that's really our testimony, be able to come through that. So we kind of can attest to what you mentioned, Natalie, about being able to work through different things as a process and being able to do that as a couple.
Mhm.
But the thing is it one of those things where we have to, how difficult then is it, or what does it look like for a man to be emotionally unstable? I'm sorry. What does it look like for a man, though, to be emotionally unstable?
Before I answer that, I want to offer that in my opinion, there are levels of instability, or you can look at it on a spectrum. And so there are very acute instances where there is a lot of emotional recklessness, sometimes violence and chaos. And then there's the lighter or less acute end of the spectrum, where there is a little bit of back and forth and we have these unrealistic expectations, and we can learn and work through them. So I want to bring that up to be respectful.
That's good.
To the variety of relationships and individuals that might witness this video or hear this video. Now, in terms of emotional instability in men versus emotional instability in women, I want to say a lot of the symptoms are very similar. They just show up slightly differently. So in men, you may see a bit more of the overt, like in your face control, and who you going with, where you going, and you didn't do this and you didn't do that sort of thing. But with both, you're going to see some level of manipulation. I need you to read my mind. Some passive aggressive communication styles, or aggressive and hostile communication styles. And it almost feels like love or peace within a relationship is a constantly moving target.
Mm-hmm.
If you do this, then I won't argue with you. But why didn't you do this other piece? Now I'm going to argue with you. In short, the difficulty that an individual has with emotional instability is that they're looking to the outside to help them feel balanced and stable.
That part.
Wow.
I describe it as the world. They want the world to move, to change, to shift, to show up the right way, so that they can have an internal sense of peace, happiness, contentment. When the reality is that an individual is responsible for what they think, how they feel, and how they choose to show up in the world, and cope with it in a productive way. Struggle with emotional dysregulation or emotional instability, they struggle with coping. They struggle with coping with the word no. They struggle with coping with feeling a little bit of insecurity or a lot of insecurity.
Mhm.
They struggle with, does this individual genuinely want to be with me? Or are they with me because of XXX, and so on and such? And so there's also fears of abandonment, fears of rejection. There's
Wow.
people pleasing. I mean, there's just a lot there. So it's not as cut and dry as how does a woman show up? How does a man show up?
Yeah.
Okay.
It will just show up differently in different people. And for some people, it's on the less acute end versus the more acute end. Some people even wrestle so much or intensely with this that they engage in self-harming behaviors in order to receive the love, attention, commitment, or whatever is they're looking for from the other person.
So what are those self-harming behaviors? You mentioned that. I'm like, let's talk about that. Let's dig deeper.
So you can harm yourself in a number of different ways. There's little self-harm where you could be engaging in self-mutilation, such as cutting or burning, pulling hair, picking, things like that. And there's also things like substance use and abuse, right? You're doing this, I'm not hurting anyone, but you struggling to get up and go to work the next day, or you engaging in very reckless and impulsive, inappropriate behavior when under the influence. Even or sabotaging certain relationships can be considered a way to harm self, right? I really love Rick, and I'm not sure if Rick is going to stay with me forever, even though he says he will. Let me harm this relationship, let me sabotage the relationship so that I don't receive that love from Rick, because I can't trust it.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
It's a lot. Y'all weren't ready for this, right?
Yeah, that's deep. That's deep.
It's serious.
Yeah.
I'm just glad we're talking about it, because I just feel like personally, this isn't something that we talk about probably enough. And you see relationships dissolve, and some relationships dissolve or they're not thriving because you can see that cycle of instability. You can see the up and down. You can see that insecurity and how it shows up. You can see the self-harm and overindulgence and how that helps to destroy a person, which then leads to destroying a relationship, which then leads to destroying potentially a family. So there's this cycle. And how do we overcome and break those cycles? I think, and we talked about this, thinking about it when you're single and even before you get into a relationship. What are the things that you need to start to do now for yourself before you even get into that relationship? Any thoughts on that?
Yes, self-reflection is one, but don't just stop at self-reflection. I want you to I would encourage one to consider, what have their past intimate relationships look like? Are you dating the same person just with a different name? Do all the relationships, have they ended up the same way, where there's chaos and shenanigans and whatnot, and then you're left alone by yourself and people have constantly abandoned you, things along those lines. And then do the heavy work behind that insight, about gaining that insight. Some people can work through those things through self-help books, and others therapy, some good therapy, where you are an actual active participant within the therapeutic process. Meaning go into the therapy session presenting fair information. Oftentimes when we want to feel heard, we're going to tell our part of the story, right? But we won't always tell the fullness of everything that has occurred. So I might say what Rick did, but did I say my part?
I contributed.
Part, right? How I showed up. And I'm going to be honest with you, therapy has become a thing since the onset of the COVID mandate, but therapy is hard work. Many people go into a therapy session and they're ready for it, and after they're a little exhausted because it's emotional work. And then do the homework after your therapy session. There is homework. Not everyone calls it homework. I call it homework, but I'm encouraging folks to do a thing and spend time with self. Understand what your definitions are when it comes to intimate partner relationships. Understand what your values are. Understand where you came out of and how it can possibly taint a future relationship, right? Family
Mhm.
of origin, things like that. And do the work, do the therapeutic work.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay.
It seemed like you mentioned. Oh, go ahead.
One more thing. Owning what you think and how you feel.
Hmm.
People don't make us mad, but that's what we've been taught since, grade school, kindergarten. People make me mad. No, you're upset, you're mad, you're lonely because of what you think about an event or a situation. And that then impacts how you feel. And then you have a choice as to
Mhm.
how you want to cope with or show up in the world, feeling what you feel and thinking what you think.
Mm, that's good.
There's a lot you said there.
So
There's a lot you said there. So let's unpack a little bit of that. You mentioned about owning, even before that, about not being responsible, not taking responsibility, looking at other people and what they did wrong, but not looking at yourself. Is that what you would see in a lot of people who are perhaps emotionally unstable? That they need to do more of the work themselves, on themselves.
You can absolutely see blaming in situations where an individual is struggling emotionally. But we have to have fair accountability for our part in a thing and allowing other people to own their own thing. So and I use the word fairness because relationships take two people. I say a thing, they say a thing, and then we take that information in and then we respond hopefully appropriately. But I can only be responsible for what I say and what I do and how I say it and do it. And there's such a thing as called intent there, right? I'm intending to hurt, I'm intending to care, I'm intending to love. And sometimes that the way we communicate, it distorts the intent. And so making sure that I'm showing up in a way that's intentional with love with my significant other, and then having conversation when I feel slighted or offended by something that has been said and or done. And also wanting to make sure that when during those times when we have that conversation, that I'm not the only one speaking in fairness about what has happened, that hopefully that other person is also speaking in fairness and willing to own their part.
Got it. Wow. Okay. Definitely on your part. There's been a lot of discussion in terms of mental um what is it called? Mental health and all of that. Not enough discussion on emotional health. Um do it and this is just we're having a conversation. So do you see that there's more of an emphasis on the mental part than the emotional, and should there be more of an emphasis on the emotional instability than the mental um, instability?
I think that it all goes together. I think it all goes
Okay.
together, right?
Mhm.
Um, what we think impacts how we feel.
Yes.
What I'm thinking, if I think that an offense or something someone has said or done is offensive to me, then I'm going to feel like they've offended me. I
Mhm.
have a choice then to determine how I want to respond. Am I going to act out and flip out on them and cuss the person out and throw dishes? Am I going to tell them to leave the house?
Mhm.
How am I going to manage that? So I believe that you have to manage all of it together. There
Okay.
shouldn't be there should not be a separation.
Separate. Okay.
I'm an individual and all of this is me.
Got
All
it.
of me. So
Yeah.
I have to address all of it. All of it.
So I'm married. We're in this relationship.
Mhm.
We're together. I really want to commit to my vows to death do us part. But I see that my partner is emotionally unstable. How do I show up for them?
Hmm.
How do I help them to show up for themselves? What are maybe a couple key words of wisdom you would give a person who's in that situation?
Wow. Really understand first your capacity as an individual. Being married, I love my husband. We've been together, our wedding anniversary was 25 years this past March. We've been together 30 years this October, 30 years.
Right.
I love him to death. I know he loves me, but I am not responsible for caring for him in that way. He is not responsible for caring for me in that way. We get to support one another,
Mhm.
right? Hold space for one another while they do the work. If you kick me in the shins and I say, ouch, that, that hurt, can you not kick me in the shins? And then you continue to repeatedly kick me in the shins. We have to have a different kind of conversation.
Right.
And, I want to be mindful about how I respond to the question,
Mhm.
because I want to be respectful for, there's so many different stories, so many different relationships out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as an individual, I have to know that I'm giving my all in the relationship in terms of support, patience, wisdom, seeking outside help with counseling, marital counseling, couples counseling, as well as giving them the space to think what they think and feel what they feel, and not fall into the trap of owning their stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
That makes any sense. I can't
Oh, yeah.
own stuff. If he is wrestling with certain thoughts of, you going to work again, how many clients do you have today? And you coming home, how many male clients do you have? And then I validate who he is to me, right? That's how I
Mhm.
show up for him.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Validate, no, date nights, couple time,
Yeah.
time. I show up for him. I'm holding space
Yes.
in
That's
that way.
good. I love that.
And then he gets to manage what's going on in here and in here.
Yeah.
I can't
Okay.
jump in there and do that. I'm way out of my lane if I do that.
I love that you define our roles as a spouse, as a partner, and what that can look like with
Mhm.
showing up. Because you're right, especially as women, right? It's I want to fix it, I want to fix it, I want to change, I want to make it better, I want to, but
Mhm.
there's only so much I can do. So really understanding what I have control over and where I need to show up is, I think that's super valuable.
Yeah, because we have to, as men, we have to be able to. We want to protect, we want to do those things, but we
Mhm.
have to be able to. There's some things we have to do for ourselves as well. We have to have that accountability. But it looks different because it's better if it's from perhaps someone else.
Like
Sometimes,
another brother,
yeah, absolutely,
like another brother telling you
right.
the truth.
Right, because
This is
your
hard
wife
for
can
you.
tell you one thing,
The truth.
but then and you take it one way, but then someone else, another man tells you something, and
The
it's the
same
same
truth.
thing, and you receive it, right? So it's different.
Who's the source? Who's the messenger? The messenger.
The messenger in
The
terms of
message is the same, but the messenger.
okay, yeah, but it all depends, right? Depends on the messenger. Depends on the messenger, right? So let me ask you, Natalie. Do you see a lot of male clients?
I see a fair amount of male clients. The majority of my caseload consists of women.
Majority consists of women, and
Hmm.
okay, so between the males, and so you would say perhaps maybe 25-75 men to women, or maybe not that much,
Mm, Give or take.
give or take.
Yeah.
Oh,
So you want to invite her to the next man cave?
well, no. Well, that's interesting. Maybe invite her to the man cave, but
Man cave conference.
it's interesting though that if we have men who are supposed to, by standards of God, are the head.
Yeah, that's good.
Most of the people, clients you see are women.
Yeah.
Can this contribute to perhaps maybe men don't feel like they need help in
Oh,
the emotional
absolutely.
stability part?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There are so many people. The way that women are created, we're more likely to go and seek support and help and talk about a thing than a man is. We're more likely. I'm not saying that's 100% of the time, right? It's just the way that our Father created us. But more men do need to be in therapy. There are so many men in the world who are not dealing with their own stuff. They are being reckless with their
Mm-hmm.
women. They are
Mm-hmm.
reckless with their wives and with their girlfriends. There are far too many women who are trying to play both roles
Mm-hmm.
In a relationship, I'm trying to be myself, and I'm also trying to teach my husband how to show up consistently for me, or play the role, or coach him in some way, shape, or form, when oftentimes it boils down to, I need him to go figure it out in a healthy way, in a productive way, and then come back and not be reckless with me. And just far too many women are just not being treated well.
Mm-hmm.
And some may not even realize that they are emotionally unstable. They may not even realize, you're right, there's recklessness there, but do they even realize that they're being reckless?
No.
Do they have that accountability to tell them, dude, that's not okay. You need to do differently, or you can do better, and here's how. So
some of them do have that community, and I think that's an important part about this discussion too. Is important to bring up community as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yourself with, who are your supports, who is within that inner circle, who are you receiving counsel from, because we all need wise counsel. And some people do not have that in their life, and some men are just blessed and gifted that, you know, God gives them downloads to say, this is how I want you to show up in the world.
yeah,
And obey that. But there's a large majority that do not have that.
yeah.
Many men don't realize that they have issues with mommy and daddy.
Mm-hmm.
Society just says women have daddy issues, and that's pretty much it. But we have both mommy and daddy issues. Ultimately, we all need to work on ourselves emotionally and mentally, independently, and then as well as together, right? I can't go into the secret place and just work on me, and it looks very selfish to my spouse. You know, I got to come out, and we have to connect and work together on things.
You mentioned, and I'm glad you mentioned the topic of mommy and daddy issues, those things. I've heard, and people talk about, especially men talk about, things that happen in their childhood, and it affects them even now. There are people who believe that that's an excuse for how they're behaving or acting out. What is your take? I mean, is it legitimate to say, you know what, I have some issues, from my childhood and affects me now? Is that legitimate, or is that people making an excuse for, what's happening?
I believe that it's not enough just to have insight. It's not enough just to have insight to say, this stuff happened to me, and this is how, I'm dealing with the people around me in the day-to-day, in the present. I actually have to be an active participant on managing the residual effects of my past. So I believe at some point we got to take those parents down up off the cross and be responsible and active participants in our lives, and do different, show up differently. If I know that my father was an alcoholic, then am I reckless with my alcohol consumption or substance use? If I know that that's something in my lineage, no, I show up in the world differently, and I'm intentional with how I show up. Some people, again, have that wisdom, right, and that insight, but they do nothing with it. And other people have it, and then they move forward. And some people, again, have no clue that this is why they're showing up. They just do.
Interesting.
So how do you show up? That's a good question. We can ask ourselves, how do we show up? That's a good takeaway. Like, how do you show up? And am I still blaming someone else, or am I taking the responsibility and ownership of how I show up and what I can do differently to move forward? I think that's a good takeaway.
Right. And how do people know that they're free, emotionally? Like, they've been through the work. Perhaps it perhaps is working, but how do they know that they're free when, to move forward in their relationship, in marriage, or whether before marriage? How do people know that they're free?
Man, that's a tough question. You need to know what it looks like when you're not doing well in a relationship. If you have that example of, this is how I showed up poorly in my past relationship. I was controlling, I was manipulative, I was aggressive or hostile. I was a little paranoid, whatever. and I didn't like that version of me, and we work to change and manage those things. We do have to test it out at some point, right? And we have to begin dating, but we have
Mhm.
to use wisdom in the people that we choose to allow in our space, in our intimate world, that, you know, in that way. So it's on it's an individual basis, but you need to make sure that you've actually done the work. You can't just say, oh, I read this book and okay, I'm ready to go out here now. No, healing is, there are several layers to healing, several layers to healing. And if you get into this new relationship and you show up and you start seeing some um signs of the air quote old way that you used to show up, you might want
Mhm.
to go ahead and begin being more mindful and intentional with addressing them with that person, and have a conversation with that person and let them know you're
Mhm.
struggling with jealousy, if that's the case, or insecurity or low self-esteem, whatever it is that you're struggling with. And then teach them how to support you. Not they have to check all these boxes off, right? And you're controlling them.
Yeah.
Right.
But can you offer, Roz, I'm struggling with insecurities. You know what, can you just have tea with me once a month? That would be great. And we can have a good conversation to catch up. And it's yes or no, right?
Right.
For Roz. And if she's able to do it, fantastic. And if not, I still have to know how to cope. I have to cope. I'm
Right.
either choose to cope in an unproductive way, or I'm going to choose to cope in a productive way.
That way.
If unproductive coping, there's recklessness there. You might
Mhm.
see promiscuity, you might see gambling, you might see blaming, you may see this uptick in social media use with certain comments. You're not
Mhm.
coping in a
So
productive way, and you need to show up and cope in a productive way. So it's a difficult question to answer with
Right.
just considering everyone that may hear this.
Exactly. Okay.
mm,
Interesting. Did you have something you want?
no.
So you mentioned about several layers. Could you go into that several layers of healing?
Yeah. This is just my opinion. It's similar to going through healing is similar to grief, experiencing grief or loss. You have the five stages of grief and loss, and they hit you at different times and on different levels. And healing is the same. I may be able to be healed in terms of low self-esteem and insecurity when it comes to female relationships and friendships, but maybe not so much when it comes to intimate partner.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Okay.
I have to, and the only way to have healing or begin to understand the level of healing that I'm in is to engage and be in relationship with people. But I cannot hold that other person, whether it be a friend or intimate partner, hostage because of how I feel and what I think and what I'm enduring. I have to still care and cope for self.
I do have one last kind of comment because as we wrap this up, and it's around our faith, right? We're faith-based people. We're talking to a lot of individuals who have a faith background, and we pray, we believe in Christ. We are asking the Lord to help us, as you just mentioned about healing, um, managing grief levels, things of that sort. How do you feel that faith shows up too in this space of becoming emotional stable? How does the Holy Spirit work as we do the work
Sure.
to move forward
Mhm.
and grow as well?
It's you. One, you have to know the word, right? You have to know what's in the word, what's in the Bible, and have you worked on your relationship with God? Have you worked on that intimacy with Him? And as we come higher and we're working on our relationship with Him, He will then in turn guide us through the Holy Spirit to nudge us when we're not doing right in our friendships and when in our
Mhm.
partnerships. And even though we have moments where we might lash out verbally or outwardly, when we finally come to ourselves, we're gonna get that tap. We're gonna get that tap, and we're gonna feel that remorse
Yeah.
about, oh, I was reckless with my spouse just now. I need to reconcile with them. I need to come to them and
Mhm.
not just apologize, but actually do different going forward. and not just intend and say that I'm going to do different going forward. And it's different for different people in terms of when you get that tap, that nudge. And I want to just add that we have a memory, right? God has blessed us with a memory.
Oh, yeah.
Go back into our past and recall different situations and different environments. And so sometimes we will be very reactive to something that someone has said or done because someone did it to us a long time ago. And now we're reactive in the here and now, doing our best to not be reactive. We can't get rid of the memory. It's there, right? But we have a choice on how to respond versus reacting.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for the insight.
Thank you, Natalie Allen.
So much there. And we just hope and pray
Yes.
that the people will just take this information and really use it and apply it.
Yes.
So awesome, so effective. How can people get in touch with you, Natalie?
2 ways. You can give us a call at 708-664-2167, or you can visit us at our website at charismatherapy.org.
Can you give us that number just one more time?
We're going to have it on the screen too, dear.
Absolutely. 708-664-2167.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing such
Yes.
great knowledge, encouraging us, great nuggets that we can take to be better and healthier, and how we show up in our relationships. So awesome. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.
Peace.